Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Real Chumps. I am your host, Marcel, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Danny.
In this week's episode, we are going to discuss the gritty 2007 James Mangold Western, 310 to Yuma, starring Russell Crowe and Christian Bale.
This is a solid movie.
Such a solid movie.
So good. We'll dig into it, talk about it all. Before we do, okay, here's a would you rather question. Would you rather watch only Western movies for the rest of your life, or every movie that you watch from now on is like in like 2x speed?
That is a very good would you rather. Okay, so 2x speed, I'd probably do a Western.
For the rest of your life.
For the rest of my
You can only
life.
watch Westerns.
Yeah, it's really funny that you say that, because like I edit, sometimes I'll edit in 2 times speed or whatever. When I watch content, I'm usually watching it at regular speed. I know my wife and I know many other people will watch content 2x or 1.5x all the time. That's not me.
I'll put like my kids like shows on 1.5 because it's like we're gonna watch one episode, then you're going to bed, right? So like I'll do that. I have to watch everything like in regular speed.
Me too.
But I don't know that I could watch like only Westerns for the rest of my life.
Because like you miss that I would lose meaning on different things or whatever. So I don't know. I just, the one thing is like what is a Western classified as?
Sure, but it's only one genre. Like you'd miss everything else. I would choose 2x. That would be unfortunate, especially like watching like dramas or whatever. But like 2x, I just
Can you imagine watching telenovelas? Well, I mean they're kind of 2x speed.
They're already okay. Well, good choice, Danny. I guess.
It's gonna haunt you for the rest of the month.
It will. Okay. Well, let's talk about 310 to Yuma. I think this is our first Western.
This is our first Western
in our podcast. I know you brought it up to want to do it. Let's talk about your experience or history with this movie, and why you suggested this movie in the first place.
You know, I think the reason why I decided to suggest this movie is because when I was very much not a fan of Westerns. I think part of it was I didn't fully understand, or, you know, like when you think of some of the Westerns, you think of the old, I mean, you think John Wayne.
Sure.
But I didn't really see any John Wayne movies growing up or whatever. The Burning Saddle, you know, campy, kind of cheesy, sort of that sort of thing.
Blazing Saddles.
Oh, Blazing Saddles. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for all those Blazing Saddle fans.
Don't at him.
I mean, if you do, I understand it. It was a huge genre
massive genre.
It was like a good decade. Not decade, but like a good chunk of time where some of the big blockbuster ones were Westerns. I would say, like
for decades, like studios were just pushing out Westerns left and right, and there were hits. But yeah.
And so I think for me is that, like, you know, I would hear about these and I'm like, Western's weird. But there's something about 310 to Yuma that makes it more than just a Western. And I think part of it is it's in Western themed and everything like that. But like, I think the story, the way they decided to go, how they went about with the characters, it has all the great aspects of Western, but there's such a great impact for it. And I think maybe that's what it really comes out to is like, I just loved what I felt from this when I finished this film.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. No, I think for me, this movie, okay, so confession, this was my first time watching it. I thought I had seen this before. I hadn't.
What?
Yeah. I remember this movie coming out, and I remember wanting to see it, but I'd never seen it, and I just never got around to it. And I think I confused this with, because we were talking weeks ago about this, but I think I confused this with True Grit. And then, like, when I started watching it, and I put on the trailer, I was like, oh, wait, no, I have not seen this. I do remember the trailer. I do remember this coming out, but I never got around to see it, and this was my first time.
When did the second True Grit come out?
2010, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny because I want to say, I don't know, but I think 310 to Yuma kind of was like a revival with wanting to shoot, like, Westerns is still viable. That was like, it was still a viable genre to kind of shoot content for.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly. I think my mom actually bought this film
Okay.
randomly. She's like, because my mom she's always like, it's a great, they say it's a great movie or whatever. And I'm like, all right. And I'm like, Mom, it's rated, R. She's like, yeah, but they say it's a great movie.
It's a great.
And so I watched a many movies, some with my mom, some with not, but like, because my mom got them because they were great movies.
Because they were great movies, yeah.
Honestly, what it comes down to is Russell Crowe kills it
He does so
as
good.
Ben Wade.
Yeah.
And then Christian Bale does what he does best when it comes to his acting with connecting with his character.
And I think people criticize Christian Bale's acting and whatever, but I think he is great when you give him material that can bring emotion and humanity
Yes.
to a character.
100% agree.
And he does that so well here. You feel for him as a father, as a husband, right? Even as a rancher, and it's so solid his ability to portray those emotions of insecurities, of failure, of a lack of quote unquote success. And he is he's great at
what is
portraying
your
that
experience
with the
this?
material
I mean,
that's
so
given to
sorry,
him.
you watched this for the first time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that it was a little bit rushed because I know it was a crazy week. And also, side note, I'm sorry that last week's episode came out a little bit late. That won't happen for the next couple of months or 2 weeks. Who knows?
Sorry about that, everyone. But just make sure you're subscribed, and then you'll get notified as soon as one comes out. But it won't happen again, ideally.
Yeah. I mean, we will be releasing Mondays regularly. Life happens.
But no, my experience with it. So I think I didn't watch this one. I think because it was rated R, and like I just never got around to it. I was still like a teenager when this came out. But westerns in general, like I've never liked them, and I think like here comes like my ignorance. But like I always thought they were boring, and like
it's easy to go by.
Yeah, and especially like the black and white ones. I think
Yes.
my complaint with them has always been like, I don't know where we are, especially when it's black and white, because like this set looks exactly at the beginning of the movie, looks exactly as the middle set where they're traveling, and it looks exactly as the final scene, because it just always looks the same for me.
I would also say that like sound design, like music cues, like they were pretty dry. I mean, when you think about what we think of cinema today, a lot of those things, I mean, they were beginning to be put into place and whatever, but I mean, they're teleplays, like.
And they were built like serials, right? Like they were serialized content back then. So I just couldn't get around westerns. I think like the most western movie I ever got, or like as a growing up, was probably Back to the Future Part 3. I hate to say that, but that was probably like my most like interaction with westerns. Over the years, I've learned to like appreciate the storytelling, but like also I didn't like him just because how do I say this? Like, pardon my French, but like they're just like pissing contests among like the characters a lot of times. And sometimes I'm just like, like guys, like just I can't get behind the antagonist and I can't get behind the protagonist. Whereas this movie blows it out of the water.
Let's get into it. So we have this Western. So let's talk this. I think one of the biggest thing about this Western is that it is character driven. That's what it is. It is about, and if you think about, I think a while back we discussed the fact that like in cinema, especially now when we think about blockbusters, we think about Disney, we think about all these things. Oftentimes, too many films, too many productions they're trying to think, and they're like, okay, well, we have a film, but we have it part of a bigger thing, or we have a series, and so sometimes some of the things that could have really helped the series or the movie really be the best it can be was left out because they needed to put resources somewhere else or whatever. I mean, as a follow-up for Ant-Man, I found they released the fact that like a lot of the budget went to Wakanda Forever, right? And so, I mean, that whole aspect. But this film is very much the beginning, a middle, and an end, and we follow a character's arc. And I was gonna say, I was like, honestly, the question, and I think ultimately at the end of this episode, I'd love to know who we think the story, whose story this film is about. Because I think that it can be very different times you watch it.
In contrast with that, I think you look at traditional westerns,
Yes.
and traditional westerns tend to be about like the gunfights, right? And not so much the set locations, and not so oftentimes not so focused on the character, rather on the overall story.
Or even the fact that like it's the idea of like outlawism. I don't know if that's the right term, but the idea of like this good the terrible trope of the cowboys versus Indians, and like I mean things as Mexicans like is ridiculous, right? It's just you look back at something, you're like, ugh, that cringe,
Yeah,
cringe hard. Necessarily propaganda, but
it was definitely portrayed how look at how, let's be careful. Look how great the white man is in contrast to the Indian, right?
or even females, right? Like, I mean, like, or even families who just wanted a better life, right? If you were not willing to, and I think ultimately, like, and we look in this film as we discuss more, where are you willing to bend, right? When there is no real law, how much are you willing to bend? And how much are you willing to rely on the morals or your principles or an internal code in whatever aspects that we might, whatever aspect that might be.
And from both aspects, right? You have Evans, Christian Bale's character, who clearly has a moral code, right? He's going to stick to that. He's not going to kill. He wants justice to be brought. Sure, he's motivated by the reward. That's originally his motivation, right? Of why he's doing what he's doing. But as the story goes on, he has a code. But then you also look at Ben Wade's code, right? And his code is not so much
Lawlessness.
yes,
Yeah.
rather it's my gang, my group, right? We have each other's back, and you're either with me or I will kill you, right?
Well, and it's funny you say that, because I think like not only that, but like he, for him, he is accepted that there's no real law, and that if he doesn't decide, like to me, Ben Wade, like one of the biggest core for him is that like he is the what what I'm trying to think. He's solidified himself as like, you know what? No one's gonna give me what I want unless I take it. And that is what he lives by.
As well as Evans, right? There's a scene where Evans says, "Where has God been?" Right? Like this is he's talking to his wife, and he's saying, "Where has God been in helping me? I lost a leg. My child has tuberculosis. Our farm is not growing and it's not green. Where has God been? That's why I'm gonna go do this." Right? And so you have two individuals who feel like maybe they haven't been rewarded, so to speak, by God, so they have to take matters into their own hands. Whereas one takes it by killing and
By force?
by force, and you have Evans, who's doing it with a moral code to guide him.
So let's do a quick nutshell. Ultimately, this story is about Dan Evans and his family, who at the very beginning of the film, their barn gets burned because they owe some money, and instead of paying rent, he paid for some food, and like because they want their land for the railroad. At that point, there's a big Ben Wade is introduced with his posse, which Prince
Yes.
he's legendary. So, anyways, the posse robs a Pinkerton run, which is like these people who travel money back and forth for the railroad. From that point on, it's a race on who did it, capturing Ben Wade, trying to deliver Ben Wade to a train to Yuma prison, and the what it comes down to, and what I think is really interesting, because I think when going back to like the traditional Western, is that this film is very focused on the cinematography choice for this film is very interesting, because it's very tight focal lengths. I mean, or what that means is when you're filming. Right now we're filming at a 50 millimeter, which is a pretty natural kind of focal length, meaning the background isn't like doesn't feel super far away, but it's not super like close up. So that's called compression. When you're the person, the subject, and the background feel like they're really close together, that is the compression of the subject background. The higher up you do, so like 50 mil to 85 mil, you're going to have a tighter compression. At 125 mil, you're going to see that compression a lot big. It's going to be more intense, but it's also going to have a much tighter field of view, which means I might be much further back, but you're going to be really close up on individual. This film, like, there's not many. I mean, if there is a wide shot, it's very much story driven to put it in the context of like where the character is at. But most of the film is very much on in characters, like seeing their emotions, and like you're looking at them and you're seeing their thoughts and whatever. That was like the biggest thing that stood out to me when I rewatched this film this time.
It's interesting because that tightness of that focal length, it translates as well to how tight the story is.
Yes, it's almost claustrophobic.
Yeah, like the movie, and this isn't a criticism to it, but the movie doesn't allow breathing room.
No,
it is go right from the beginning with the fire, introducing Ben Wade, and just moving forward. Like it's a very tight story, and I think that's very, very smart. Again, going back to old westerns where there's a lot of
meandering.
Yeah, meandering. Let's call it. I was just going to say nonsense dialogue, but meandering. This is introduced so well and really tightly kept, which allows for maybe not breathing room, but it allows for us to just keep the story going and moving and forward and hitting those beats that we need to hit.
It's refreshing. It really. I mean, watching Remember the Titans, watching this film. And I mean, even like with La La Land, you're dropped into a wonderful musical, but like this film, I think I'm beginning to realize that I really love when I'm not handheld. Yeah. We're just dropped into a scene, especially when it comes to films. Like when we're in films, I think in series, I think I'm a little different, but in this film, I just really appreciated the fact that like there's a huge struggle right from the get-go. Posses. Let's talk about Ben Wade and the posse.
Awesome. I think. Here's what I wrote in my notes when I was watching it. Ben Wade is almost written like a horror villain. He sits back at the beginning of the movie, right? And he lets his posse do the thing, right? You feel the presence. They keep talking about Wade, and he's just sitting in the background. Okay, it isn't until about like 20 minutes into the movie where he kills, where we see his skill. Right, and he kills the Pinkerton and one of his posse people.
Correct.
Right, and that's when you see the threat that is Ben Wade. But then the movie, as they break off and they're transporting him to the train station, he starts killing one. He starts just picking them off one by one, like a horror movie. And I thought that was so interesting to really portray this character, because even the first killing of one of the, I can't remember the character's name, but everyone's
posse.
Of the group that's transporting him. Everyone's asleep, right? It's that guy's turn to like watch, and the way the killing is, Christian Bale's character wakes up, looks over, and he's just going at him.
Dude, that character pisses me off so much. No, but I totally agree. I remember that was one of the most impactful scenes when I first watched it. It was like, what is happening? Like, because like the guy singing, "They're gonna hang me in the morning," and he's like, dude, can you please, like, Ben Wade's just like annoyed. And I think what's really interesting that you bring this up, that they treat it as like like more of like a suspenseful like killer thriller, even though it doesn't feel that way. But when you say that, I'm like, wow, that's 100% right. Because I think there's some really great quotes. Ben Wade is talking to William, who is Dan Evans' son, Christian Bale's son. He's like, you saved us from, this scenario, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, kid, I wouldn't last 5 minutes leading an outfit like that if I wasn't as rotten as hell. And I think like that, him being like, it's funny because I don't know why we're getting religious, but I feel like it. But if you think about like what Lucifer, when you think about the Bible and some of those things, he's a serpent, right? And he beguiles Eve, right? I feel like Ben, he comes in, he's suave.
Very suave. Charming almost.
Charming, 100%. Very, the scene, he's in there in the scene in the Evans home. Lucy's in there and she's smitten by him. Every
woman that he interacts with is smitten by him.
Yeah. And the thing that is so intriguing is that he understands that even this, like, despite what he might, like, what he sees and what might be good or bad, he's just playing his own game, his own role. There is another quote that talks about a little bit of like some of like, they say like, well, they talk about the things you've done and demanding people. He's like, Doc, who's he's like, is it true that you dynamited a wagon full of prospectors in the Western Territories last spring? No, that's a lie. It was a train full. Like, yeah, it's like a dinner conversation chat. Like he's like, and I think as we go through the film, we begin to see how much of a rotten human, like, not that a person that would be so willing to kill, yet be so welcoming.
Yes. Which I think, okay, well, let me ask you this question. Is Ben Wade truly evil?
And I don't know. And I think that's what's so intriguing about it. He's in the West.
Yeah.
He was left at a train station and he was left to read the Bible by his mother, right? We know that towards the end of the film. And so we know that he's looked at, and he quotes scripture.
He quotes scripture all the time.
And I think for him, he looked at what is maybe found in the Bible and some of these things, but realized that there's no way for him to survive unless he decides to take like ownership of it. Mm-hmm. And so for him, it's not so much and I think for me, he's an evil dude.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think for himself, he doesn't look at himself as, he classifies himself as rotten, but rotten means that like it was uncared for.
Yes. Which I think is what I love about the character of Evans, is that Wade, for whatever reason, I think he admires Dan's and Steven's idealism.
Yeah.
And not just that, but like there are times, like you mentioned, they discuss religion and retribution, right? They talk about retribution. He to the point when he kills that first guy of the group, he says like, he told me he burned down your barn. Like, aren't you glad that I did?
Yeah.
Like, and Dan's response is like, yes, I didn't like him, but I wouldn't have resorted to kill him, to murder, right? So there's this dynamic between the two that they both, again, going back to what we talked about, they feel like they've maybe been left behind by God. They haven't been rewarded, so to speak. They're taking matters into their hands, but how do they take it, right? How do they each individually choose to act upon the circumstances that life has given them? And they never, at least in my opinion, I don't think they ever really quite become friends. There's this respect that Wade has for Dan, that idealism, and what he wants to accomplish for his family. But it's so unique how Wade, he's charming, he's menacing, but there's this soft side to him that really respects Evans.
But why do you feel that Wade has come to respect Evans?
I think there's 2 points. I think the first time is this is a man, he's not stubborn, rather a man that sticks to a code. Whether that code is a code that Wade agrees with or not, I don't think he does, but he respects, I think, that idea that Evans has a code and that he's willing to stick with it and do whatever he can to provide for his family. And then I think the real point of respect is when he tells his son, like that he confesses my injury came from someone from my own side, like shooting me.
Because we were retreating.
We were retreating. I got shot by one of my own people. He says, I think I wrote it down. He says, "You try telling that story to your boy."
This film like have these nuggets of like, because that because he's the entire film, right? We see William, who's the oldest son, fight, like literally just bad mouthing his Dan.
No respect for his dad, to the point where he says, "I will never walk in your shoes." Like,
Yeah, well, and I mean, like one of the opening things is like he lights the match, and we see that he's reading outlaw books, these dime stories. I think anyways, about like true men, perhaps, right? And like dealing and then having the barn burn, right? So you sense that tension. Towards the end of the film, you start to see more respect from William for his dad. And and I still every time I watch this, I'm like, is he doing it truly for for his son, or is he doing it for himself?
I think both. I think mostly motivated for himself. Yeah, he's motivated to get the money, but I think that motivation is, I can provide for my family. I am, quote unquote, like you said, a man, right? I can do these things. So I think he's trying to prove it to himself and to show that he still has it, right? And hopefully that rubs off on his son.
I think one of the best intake or like insights. I mean, who's the screenplay writer for this? That makes so much more sense.
Yeah. So
Honestly?
you have screenplay by Michael Brandt and Derek Haas, and they've mainly worked on like TV shows. Chicago Fire, I think one of them wrote for Wanted, the James McAvoy movie with Angelina Jolie. Derek Haas has done, mainly TV. Chicago PD,
That makes a lot more sense.
FBI International.
Oh, I mean, he's a criminal. That's something he's done recently, right? So like, maybe this does feel more. I mean, because it's a film, like it's you don't have time. Like you have to get to the nitty gritty.
I also think it's good to call this out, that there was the 1957 310 to Yuma movie. Both I've never seen, but both movies, I thought 310 to Yuma 2007 was a remake of the 57 movie. No, it's not necessarily a remake. It's the story is based on a short story, and it's an adaptation. Both movies are an adaptation of the short story. I'd be curious to. I should go and read the short story and actually see like the differences and what was truly adapted, or even how the ending is different, or if it's the same. But I think it also goes back, like that tight story. My understanding is when you're adapting a short story into a film, you really have to, as a screenplay writer, find the beats and find the themes and the messages that you want to portray immediately, right? Because in a short story, it isn't like a novel. You don't have time to dig into the themes, to dig into the thoughts of your characters. In a short story, it's boom, boom, boom. Let's say it, and you feel that translated into this film.
I have to make a quick correction. It's not Lucy, it's Alice.
Alice, okay, that's right.
I don't know why I got Lucy. Man, that makes more sense. It feels, it's a film, but it feels, I can see why that this is like a short story. And I think I miss more movies like this.
Yeah. Well, here's a question for you. I feel like this movie, we talk about how great it is, right? I feel like it's not it kind of went under the radar a bit. It's not discussed as much, but those of us that have seen it praise this movie. What is it about this that makes it so good?
To me, I remember watching it for the first time, and spoiler, not spoiler alert, because if you haven't seen it, go watch it. Because we told you last week to go watch it, just for that, for the record.
That's true.
Is the ending, he shoots his entire posse. Now, Prince, let's quickly talk about Prince.
Played by Ben Foster.
And this character, when you asked me the question, is Ben Wade, like, would you say evil? No.
Yeah, is he, yeah, is that what I said? Yeah.
It's hard to say, but when you look at Prince, he
is evil.
He is evil. And I think it's funny because, like, you go through this movie and you're like, you really kind of like Wade.
Yeah.
He's a suave character that, we talked about, but Ben Foster, like from the very beginning, the way he delivers this line. And I don't know, again, I think like it'd be really interesting to see what the book, like this short story, describes, if Prince is in this or if they added him, because this character, he's ruthless. He's like the lieutenant. He's the one that really gives the orders to the men, and he has huge respect for, like, this. Like, there's no one better than Ben Wade on the face of the earth.
He loves him. I think there is a genuine love for him.
No, 100%. Like Western cowboy, like, man love.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he is like, no, I will do anything for this man. And he does. He's trying to get Ben Wade back from the authorities.
And it's such a, here's like, if I were to like bring everything into like a few words of why I love this movie, it's one, I love a movie that gives you a deadline, right?
Yes.
This one says we have to get him on the 310 to Yuma so that we can transfer him, right? Like, I forget the name of the town.
Contention? No.
Anyways, so we have a timeline, right? So we as an audience are there. Okay, we have to get him on the 310 to Yuma, period. That's what we're getting for. The other aspect that, besides like the characters and Ben Wade, I love this daunting presence of Prince the entire time.
The entire time.
You never know if he's going to turn around the corner and the posse's going to be there. When the Apache tribe is like shooting at them, you don't know if it's Prince, right? It's just this. It's such a great way to tell the story. Not only do we have a deadline, but we also have to hurry before the posse gets to us.
I think this is a master class when it comes to movie storytelling, in rising tension, in conflict. Like, you have the deadline. We need to beat the 310 to Yuma. Not only that, we have one of the biggest outlaws has robbed 10,000. That's probably like 500 million, if not like
more,
probably more.
Yeah.
Like they were offering. He's like, I want $200. To do this transfer, and Ben's like, look, I'll give you 1,000 right now, and just go home and wait. He's like, what am I gonna wait? Does he say 1,000 or does he send 10,000?
I think he first gives him. He says he'll double it, right?
Oh, that's
400.
Right.
I'll give you 400, and then eventually, I think he does offer him 1,000.
Yeah, but 1,000, right? This man who's robbed tens of thousands, like so much money that, like, literally, well, what is he doing with his money, right? Because, like, they literally live in the West. They have like nothing to do. To him, it doesn't matter,
right?
Then you have Prince who's hunting them down. The other thing is, like, along the way, Ben is literally killing all sorts of people along the way. So you have this, like, as Evan, you're like, is he gonna kill me? Or is he gonna kill my son? Or, like, the whole posse, like, the whole breakdown is like, he killed the one man. When is he gonna kill the rest of us? And just be like, all right, done with this fun little trip. He gets to a point close to the end, right? That he's like, all right, Evans, I'm done. Like, we're not doing this game. I'm gonna be finishing up, right? And that's when Evan starts to like open up a little bit more on like why he's doing this thing.
I want to touch on that. Why do you think Ben Wade eventually allows Evans to take him?
I think he's trying to understand Evans.
Like understand him as a.
I think so. The way I kind of, especially like rewatching this one, I'm like, because it is. I forgot that he like he just allows him to go. I remember watching this film and thinking, like, what is happening with this ending? It made me very much feel similar to what La La Land did.
Okay, yeah,
is like, oh, that's very much not what I was expecting. Right? It's very much like, why? The fact that he kills his whole posse, and because they, Prince, he tells Prince not to kill him, but Prince is pissed, and he kills Evans. I think what it comes down to is that Wade is trying to really, because I think he's learned to respect Wade or Evans for his code.
Mm-hmm.
He sees a man who is trying to do the right thing, but then he's also misunderstanding, or he doesn't understand, because he's like, he lives in such a circumstance that it's miserable.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to offer him like, just take this money, dude. Like he's been to this house. I think, the fact that he can, get a sense. I mean, Alice is like worried about Evans, and Dan says, I'm tired of watching my boys go hungry. I'm tired of the way that they look at me. I'm tired of the way that you don't.
You don't.
Man, that was, and I think, so Evans is trying to like, again, like prove to himself, but for Wade, he doesn't fully understand. And I think it's not until they come to the moment where, Evans, he's like, look, because he doesn't say anything to like contradict that he's not a war hero.
Sure, yeah.
Or, that, because like they know that he's a good shot, and that he, may have got the limp in the war, and that, whatever. He also, like, when the circumstances, they're pinned down in a hotel, and Evans is like, like all the marshals get shot, and the Pinkerton, the railroad guy is like, I'm going to double it, or like, I'll give you the 200 right now, and you just walk away, just go home, and like, it'll just be done. And he says, no, I got 189 for my leg, and it's bothering me. It wasn't so that I could walk away, so that they could walk. It's so that you could walk away.
I like that. I think for me, the reason he allows him to finally take him, and we see it, it's after Evans has said goodbye to his son, mm-hmm. right? And he gives him the what was it, like a medal, a coin?
Bro, I don't know if it was a medal or that is a
family heirloom,
a brooch.
Listeners, let us know what it is. Maybe that went completely over our heads, but
I mean, all I know is that it's valuable.
It's valuable, right? Because he offers it at one point. But he has that moment with William, his son, and he says, take care of your mom. Like, I need you to go take care. Mr. Pacific, I can't remember the character's name, but like, you're gonna bring the money, and you're also gonna bring in like another 1,000 to my wife and guarantee water. But it isn't until that moment that the son leaves that I think Ben agrees to board the train, because it's going to allow Evans to establish a legacy that makes him and his son proud of each other. Yeah. Right? And I think, and to me, it's solidified later when Williams finds the Bible and Wade drew like a sketch of his dad.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's when Wade says, yeah, there's something about this guy, like you were mentioning, right? Like, there's something about him trying to figure out, but it's that moment where he's like, there's a legacy left for him. There's an opportunity for a legacy to be left behind here, and an opportunity for a man, Evans, to be proud of what he's done, and the son to be proud of what the father has done. And he eventually goes on to say, like, I've been to Yuma and I've escaped
every single time.
Every time, right? So for him, it's allowing that opportunity for a father to leave behind a legacy.
We don't. I mean, again, I'm like, I'm so curious to know about Ben Wade's character. Like, what he mentions his mother, but we know nothing about his father, right? We don't know anything about his father. I mean, he is a father figure to his posse. This posse looked up him as like, like, okay, well, he's taking care of us. He's killed for us. But we also know that he feels like he's cursed because the Pinkerton takes his gun, or they take the gun, and he's like, hey, be careful for that. That gun's cursed, right? I mean, and then he uses that same gun after he gets it from Prince to shoot his whole posse.
Yeah. There's also the line where they're in that hotel room and they're having this conversation about just let it go, drop it, let me go, right? I'll give you the money. And Wade says something along the lines of like, the difference between you and me is that I like to do things the easy way.
Yeah.
And I think that's the turning point where he realizes, yeah, he's a father figure, like you said, to his posse. But here is Dan Evans being a father, and he could take the easy way by just taking the money, right? But he chooses not to, and I think that's the characteristic that Wade hasn't had in his life. That when things get hard, you just stick through it, you persevere, you fight through, and hopefully you are rewarded, or there's compensation or a good feeling at the end. And he hasn't had that. And I think that's the two characteristics about the two characters that differ from one another, is that one, whether it's hard, will do the right thing if it's the hard way to go about it, whereas the other one will take the easy way out. Which
is insane to think about, when because he's like, well, I'll just kill him.
Yeah,
let's just we'll do what a thing. Thanks for sharing that, man. Like, I think it is. I look back as you were speaking, and honestly, at the end of the day, because like he does kind of like get fed up. Ben, he's like, look, Evans, I'm done. Just like, you either shoot me now or I'm gonna shoot you. But like, the whole and then them literally in the train station box getting pinned down by the posse, by the whole town, because they like bribe the entire town to like, if you shoot the captors, we'll give you some money.
Yeah.
Again, $200. Right, man. And him just saying, like, confessing that, not confessing, just like finally just telling somebody, because he didn't tell me. He's like, what am I gonna do? And the fact that he didn't really fight in the war. The one time he fled, some punk got too scared and wasn't trained enough and whatever, and ends up shooting him, and he has a limp for the rest of his life, right? And then his son has to deal with that whole finagling thing. And that the only reason why he's dealing the whole situation is that he's got the son with tuberculosis, because it always is tuberculosis.
It's darn tuberculosis, man.
Because tuberculosis was like legit. I mean, I don't think it was a pandemic.
Wasn't it?
I don't think it was. I mean, it could have been a what is it? When it's like not quite worldwide?
An
endemic.
An endemic.
I think, I don't know. Someone fact check that.
We just went through a pandemic, and we
like tons and tons and tons of people left the West because they had to deal with tuberculosis, and even then, life sucked.
Here's one. We're coming up on time. 2 questions. Your favorite scene?
It has to be that inn scene, that hotel scene, like you were talking about. I mean, the stakes are getting higher and higher. Ben Way's just chilling, sketching in a freaking Bible, and seeing that Evans is like, he's finding a new way to help support his family, knowing full well he's gonna die. And I don't know, there's some to that scene is just a really strong scene. And not only that, but like the dynamic, even though Ben, Russell Crowe in that scene, he's like he's like just chilling. But you look at when you cut to Christian Bale, every time he is trying to he is battling the wolf.
He's processing this in his head.
Right? It's which wolf is the one that's gonna win? It's the one that you feed.
Yeah.
Right? And he is trying to decide which one is gonna take the win on this one.
To that, I love that when Wade like posts is like, dude, I'll give you double, okay? And he says, okay, are you gonna give me like a banknote? But like, no, I'll give you straight up cash.
Yeah, just whatever.
And he's like, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna walk around with the cash. Or when people start asking, like,
no, because that's when he says, I'm gonna he's like, oh, you're gonna give me he's like, yeah, you know what? He's like, no, why don't you? If you have that much money, why don't you just give me 1,000?
Yeah.
And then he's like, okay. And then, he's like, what am I going to do? What am I going to tell people?
What am I going to tell people that somehow you slipped away and yet I came across $1,000? Like, and so I love that what you mentioned. Like he's struggling. Like I like to think that maybe, yeah, he might have considered it.
Oh, every single moment.
And to the point where he is thinking out loud and letting us know, okay, if I do this, what am I going to tell people? Like you somehow slipped. A banknote, like the cash in my hand, like he's thinking this through, and so I love that. I love that you pointed that out.
I mean, I think the whole last thing I have to say on the whole scenario is that he's still asking himself because it's like, who cares what other people say? Like, just don't say anything. Just go somewhere where you can just live and no one has to know.
The easy way out.
The easy way out, right? What's your favorite scene?
Similar. I think it's the hotel scene, but I think for me, it's when he's having this conversation and we just see him sketching. We don't know what he's sketching, but I love the payoff later, like I mentioned earlier, that it's a sketch of Dan. And to me, it gave me the payoff that I wanted, because as he's sketching, I'm like, I hope he's sketching Dan. And in my mind, I was hoping that he was sketching him. And then it paid it off later where it was Dan. The son sees it, but it also just solidified the admiration, the respect, the respect that Wade has for Dan. They don't see eye to eye. In a lot of things, right? And it's just, this man is taking time. We've seen him sketch naked women or whatever, but he takes time to sketch someone that he deep down admires, and he doesn't know yet. He hasn't had that turning point of okay, I'm going to turn myself in. He's sketching this before he has decided to allow Dan to walk him to the train, and that to me just tells me everything I need to know about Wade. He's troubled. He has conflict, but he respects this man for whatever reason. He does. And I love that payoff where the son finally turns the Bible open and there's Dan sketched out.
Yeah. I think the runner up for me, just for overall, is probably the opening, the bank with the freaking Gatling gun. And the bank robbery of the Pinkerton transport. I think that probably hooked me. When I first watched it, I was like, what is this? The fact that they have this Gatling gun and they're over there like, the one real random sad note, that what is with Westerns and people, like, did they just terrible aim?
Right?
Just the worst aim in the world. Also, like, if you're not shooting them in the head, literally, it sucks.
Yeah.
You're not dying.
Yeah.
Like, these bullets aren't as, like, they're not super strong. You're bleeding out.
You're bleeding out, man.
And it's like, the Pinkerton, who's this tough as nails, like, dude, who probably,
Peter Fonda. That was, I had no idea he was in this movie. And I'm like, wait,
yeah,
that's Mr. Fonda right there.
And what's really interesting is, like, like, Ben classifies him as worse than him.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the difference is that he's getting paid to do the work of the railroad.
Of the railroad.
Right. And, you mentioned the comment that Wade was troubled. So, and I fully agree with that. So my question, I guess we're going to start about, who do you think is the true character of this film?
I think it's Dan and his son.
I do too.
I think we see we see a very palpable transformation within them, and it's Dan getting that not recognition, that affirmation that he is a good father, that he is a good husband, that he will do everything he can to provide for his family, and at the end having his son be proud of him, right? Yeah. And then William, the son, who's this bratty little punk, right? And like you said, he was reading these stories about criminals and whatnot, outlaws, going down a path, and half the time I'm like, dude, your dad is so awesome, man. Like, respect him. And then for him to finally like come to that realization that his dad really is awesome. His dad really is going to provide for them. And maybe deep down, earlier in the movie, he said, I'll never walk in your shoes. And for him to say, no, like, I think deep down inside to say, yeah, it'd be an honor to be like my dad, right? I think that's who this story's about.
I think that for me, I mean, I think you're 100% correct. And I also think that at the end of the day, this film is about what true masculinity can be and maybe is. Yeah. It's not always the easy way out. It's not always being the machoest person in the room. It's about trying to instill respect in yourself and in your family.
That also creates this unique bromance between Wade and 100%. Evans, right? Like it's such a cool bromance between them.
Wade doesn't kill Evans, but Evans also doesn't let Wade die.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched this film, please go watch it.
Go see it. It's an incredible movie. I'm watching this again sometime this week.
Good.
It is so good. Just a huge shout out to James Mangold. Okay.
Oh,
he's known for Walk the Line. Okay.
Yeah.
A solid movie. He did The Wolverine and then Logan, which Logan to me,
I just rewatched Logan with Sadie.
I know people don't like it. I love it. I think it's like the best X-Men movie.
I think it's one of the best Superman hero movies, period.
Yeah, it is so good. He, of course, is directing the new Indiana Jones. Okay.
I don't think I realized that.
Yeah, which I think is such a great choice. James Mangold is not talked about enough in Hollywood. I'm just going to say that.
Okay. I'm excited. I mean, every single one of the movies that that he has done, and I've watched, which is all of them thus far, or at least the one, like the ones you mentioned, I've loved. They're all solid films.
They're solid films, and we're gonna bring James Mangold more into this podcast because I think he's great.
If you want to talk to us, James Mangold,
yeah,
we'd love to have you on the pod.
He did Ford versus Ferrari.
Oh, amazing film, dude! With
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale.
Yeah, he knows how to give us emotion from his actors, and he's very well at letting us sync with our feelings, not handhold us, okay, but allow the viewer to just really dig into the emotions.
Well, and I mean, like Ford versus Ferrari, one the best. I mean, when Oscar, it won the best editing for the Oscar, that year. And I remember just watching that and just being like, just blown away. So I'm excited to sometime talk about that, but phenomenal. We hoped you enjoyed this today's episode. We kind of just jumped right in today, and so I hope you enjoyed that. Again, if you haven't seen this, please go watch it. And if you do, make sure to subscribe to our channel, or else I'm going to come after you. Like Ben Wayne. Actually, like Prince.
Like Prince.
Subscribe on whatever platform you get your podcast, or subscribe to YouTube. You will begin to see our, as you might have noticed from last week, our video episodes on Spotify, but you can choose whether to watch it via video or audio.
Also, again, if you're listening on Spotify, at the bottom of each episode, we'll have the show notes, but you can also engage with us through different polls and questions that we're asking. And again, if you're in Spotify, you can actually send us a voice note. So if you have thoughts about 310 to Yuma, this one, the old one, or any of the movies that we've chatted about, send us a voice note. We'll listen to it, and we'll have those conversations here as well. So do that.
You could reach us at realchums.com, or connect to us on Twitter and YouTube at Real Drums, or follow me, Danny Rubio, at Rubio_TV on Twitter, and Marcel at Marstrosity.
Join us next week, okay? We're going to watch Knives Out next week, discuss it. And the week after that, we're going to do Glass Onion. So we're going to do a back-to-back Rian Johnson, these awesome stories or murder mysteries.
Which I think is a great lead-in from this to that. Yeah. So go watch it, and we'll see you in the discussion next week.
We'll see you guys.